Today I will explain to you the most interesting things you need to know about the mechanics of the 3.2 pure fiction enemies. So let's go from top to the bottom. So let's start with Flame Reaver. This pure fiction Flame Reaver has literally almost half the mechanics compared to his MOC version. Luckily for us, since it keeps things simple. Since literally the only interesting thing that Flame Reaver does is that he can go into this charging state where he starts with 8 stacks. Now he has 0 because I have already reduced it to 0. As normally it is 8. And why are these stacks important for us? Well, as you can see, he's in this charging state, which he can enter. And when his turn starts, he will do damage to all of your allies. Whose damage is, as you might have guessed, dependent on how many stacks he has. So the more stacks means more damage he will do. So how can we reduce his stacks? Which is pretty simple, which you already might have guessed, and that is when you kill a clone of his, he will lose 1 stack. As easy as that. Fictions or just raw dog it with Phase Shower, Solar, whatever you have in plan. But this is the general guideline. But the most interesting thing about this wave is this transparent HP our allies get when they are attacked. And the main way to get this transparent HP is when a clone attacks you with his AoE attack. And the damage he does, part of that lost HP is converted into this transparent HP. Okay, why is this transparent HP helpful for us? So this red part, I mean. Well, that is that when you heal back that transparent HP, then that ally will get a buff, which looks something like this. And this buff says that our next attack will do extra damage, which is pretty helpful, of course. And how do we heal this transparent HP? Well, by having a healer in your team. So when Fusan casts her ult, everyone will heal a bit. Sure, Fusan is not a healer, but she still heals. Another way to get this transparent HP back is when you attack an enemy. And you heal more back the more enemies you attack. I reckon healer in the team, because when you have a healer in the team, getting this bonus damage for your next attack is a bit more accessible. Since now you don't have to attack enemies to restore the transparent HP back. When your healer heals your team, you will just immediately get that damage bonus. So accessible, but still, it gives that little bit of extra consistency. But Flame Reaver isn't the only enemy in this node, since we also have the second wave, where we have this fire enemy. The most interesting thing about this fire enemy is that he can enter this combustion state, which is like indicates with him like glowing with fire here and there. All you need to know is that when you see him glowing with fire, his next attack will do a bounce attack, which will bounce 5 times. And every hit of this bounce attack has a chance to enkindle the hit allies, which is like basically a fire dot. But his bounce attacks aren't the only attacks where he has a chance to enkindle you. Every attack of his has a chance to enkindle you. But with his bounce attacks, he has more hits, so more likely you will get this enkindle debuff on you. Well, how can we put him out of this charging state when he's glowing with fire? Well, when you weakness break him. But the other reason why you want to weakness break him is that he can give himself like an attack buff. You also need to weakness break him. So basically all you need to know is weakness break this boss and you'll be all fine, which will happen automatically if you just do consistent attacks. Now we also got this other enemy, and the only interesting thing about him is that he also does bounce attacks, which now can bounce 6 times and nothing more than that. And then we got this enemy, and what he does is that he attacks a single ally, and that attack has a chance to apply detonate on the hit ally. And what this detonate does is that whenever an ally with detonate on her head gets attacked, they take additional damage. That's it. But basically, there is nothing happening here that is hindering the flow of your team. Just make sure the boss is weakness broken to get him out of this fire state. And if he has an attack buff, that attack buff is removed by that weakness break. And that's it. Those small enemies on the sidelines will just die as a result of your AoE or blast attacks. So now let's get to the first wave of the second node. And let's start with this enemy right here. And as we can see, he has stacks. And these stacks are pretty important for us. Since when you reduce those stacks to 0, a couple of things will happen. First, he will take damage and his action will be delayed. And every time you attack him, he will take additional damage. But the most interesting thing is that stacks will get energy. So let's say Small Herta reduced his stacks to 0. And then the question arises, how do you remove his stacks to begin with? Well, every time you attack him, he loses a stack. As easy as that. The best case scenario would be to kill this enemy with the third attack you do to him. So you get that little bit of energy back. Since if you had killed this enemy with, let's say, 1 attack, then you would have 2 out of 3 stacks and he would be dead. So you wouldn't have gotten that energy. But yeah, that cannot always happen, of course, because it depends on the flow of your team, whether you did a big ult with all the buffs on your DPS or not. But still try to keep in mind when you, like, for example, attack with your supports or sustainers, so that your sustainer or support can do that third hit then, or reduce the stacks of that enemy a bit, so that your DPS can finish him off with a third attack. But okay, what does this enemy do now then? Because this is only his stacks. When he attacks you and he has more than 1 stack, then it's his chance to apply reverberation on you, but let's call it reverb for now. And what this reverb does is that when you have reverb on you and you get attacked again by any enemy, then that ally's action will be delayed and you cannot do anything until the start of your next turn. which is something you don't want to happen. But I literally got never this refurb applied on my allies. And this enemy was also in like a couple of times in MOC and the other pure fictions too. So the probability of him applying this refurb is really low. So you don't have to stress too much about it. But if it happens, then I just recommend you to restart since your action would have already been delayed. And there's also a thing that when this enemy attacks you and he has 0 stacks, then he has a chance to apply this refurb on himself. So when he has refurb on his head and you attack him, then his action will be delayed. But that literally never happened ever since. When he has 0 stacks, he's already dead by then because of that damage he takes and additional damage he takes every time you attack him. But all you need to know about this enemy is that you want to attack him 3 times to get that energy back, which is always appreciated. And now let's get to this enemy. The only interesting thing about this enemy is that he has a buff called Rejuvenate on his head. As you might have guessed, that when you kill him with 50% HP and 50% speed increase. It's a pain in the ass, since every attack this enemy does is that he has a chance to apply wind shear on you. So when he has revived, he is faster, so more attacks, so more possible wind shear applications on your allies, which is not that big of a deal. But still, if you have a healer in your team, it should be all fine. And yes, we can remove this Rejuvenate buff on him with, for example, Pella or Lucha, for example. But Pella would be better, even though she is not a healer. But still, she can do quite so many ultimates. She wouldn't be too bad of a pick in this node. And at last, we got this Trash Can. And the most interesting thing about him is that at the end of his turn, he will buff his own attack the whole time. So you want to make sure you get him off the field ASAP. So the focus is not to kill him, but to get him off the field, since he's really tanky. And how do we get him off the field? When you weakness break him. And as you can see, he has no weakness types now. And to apply a weakness type to him, you need to attack him. So if, for example, Fuswan attacks him, he will get the Quantum weakness type. And he can hold up to 2 weakness types this way when you attack him and that he gets that weakness type. So make sure that you don't attack him with the character whose weakness type consists. Now it doesn't matter, I just have 2 weakness type in my team, so I can attack him with anyone. But if I had a 3rd weakness type in my team, so let's say instead of 3B, Bronya, let's say, even though Bronya doesn't have basic attacks, let's say Bronya, I don't want to attack him with the Bronya since now he has the wind weakness type on him, which means it will be now way more difficult for me to weakness break him, since the only other weakness type I can inflict to him is now either Ice or Quantum, unlike saying you want some enemies. But still, if you don't have Anaxa, remember, apply weakness types to the trash can of allies who do the most consistent attacks. Now let's get to the first node, and let's start with Kafka, again from top to bottom. The most interesting thing about Kafka is this. She has many different kinds of attacks, but she has an attack that when she attacks you, she has a chance to apply shock on you. And also another attack that if you have, let's say, shock on you, and she attacks you, then she will apply shock to the adjacent allies. So as you can see, you will have some shocks on your head for sure. And the thing is, when any enemy attacks a shocked ally of yours, you will do a follow-up attack to that hit ally, which you can locally do just once per turn, just like with the playable Kafka. But still, having a cleanser, if you have difficulty sustaining in this node, would be helpful. Not only for the dots, but also because of this enemy. Since when this enemy attacks you, he will convert a portion of the damage dealt, just like with Flame Reaver, to this transparent red HP. And why is this transparent red HP important for us? Well, when you heal that transparent HP back by, let's say, because of my Lucha, then my ally will get a buff, which looks like this, which means that my next attack will do extra damage. But you can also heal this transparent HP back when you attack enemies, you heal more of that transparent HP back. But still, a healer is recommended because it makes getting this damage buff for your next attack more accessible. And then the last enemy for this wave is this enemy. What he does is that he marks an ally of his with this red cloud around him. As you can see, Kafka has that bit. And what that means is that whenever that marked ally attacks, this enemy will do an attack after that immediately. That's the most interesting thing about him. So for this wave, the most interesting thing is having a healer would be nice if you go with a sustainer to get that shock off your head and to heal more of that transparent HP back done by this monster. Since if everyone has it and your healer heals everyone will get that damage bonus for their next attack. So they don't have to attack an enemy to restore their HP. No, the healer heals them. So it's more accessible, that damage bonus. So now let's go to the second wave where we got the big lion. Why are these suns important? Well, when you have 2 of these suns on your head, then that ally will lose energy and will take some fire damage. But losing that energy is the biggest problem. Luckily, when we have the 2 suns, the suns get removed, but still we would have lost energy, which we do not want to happen. So how do we get rid of these suns on our head? Well, whenever you kill an enemy, even if that ally doesn't have a sun on their head, so let's say Ice MC kills this enemy, then for a random character in your team, their sun on their head will be removed. So the more enemies you kill, the more suns will be removed. But if that ally who killed an enemy had that sun on their head, then that sun would be removed first. So all you need to know about this lion is he can apply suns on your head with some of his attacks. He can also mark an enemy. So it would look like something like this. He has marked someone. Then he would attack that ally and adjacent allies. They would also get some sun marks on their head. But just know, kill consistently the enemies, then the suns would be removed automatically. But now let's go to this eagle. What he does is he has a single target attack, sure. But the interesting thing about him is that he can like mark an enemy with Storm Ride. And it would look something like this beneath their feet, like a small storm. And what this does is that when an enemy ends their turn with this Storm Ride, then they will get an action immediately after that again. So how do we make sure that we get rid of this Storm Ride? Well, you need to weakness break that enemy who has that Storm Ride. So if this lion had this Storm Ride, we need to make sure we weakness break him ASAP before he gets another action at the end of his turn. And now we got this enemy. As you can see, he has this weird point. Why is this point important for him? Well, when he attacks you and he has a point, then that attack will do increased damage. And he will lose that point with that attack, luckily. So how do you make sure he doesn't attack us? When you weakness break him, he will lose this point. And then the question arises, how does he get this point? To begin with, well, when he attacks you and he doesn't have a point, then he will get a point. That's it. So as you can see, the thing with this wave is you want to consistently weakness break the enemies, which should happen automatically if you have a matching weakness type team, since and the soldiers with the points on their head will also get removed. And now we got the first wave. The most irritating enemy in this wave is this bug. Since when his turn starts, his first turn, he will go into a charging state where he will be like glowing a little bit. When he gets another turn, when he's glowing like this, he will explode on you, which is a blast explosion, which is a chance to apply outrage on the hit allies. And what this outrage will do on your allies if they have it, is that they will attack a random enemy with their basic attack for 2 turns. But you don't even want to get to that point, since you want to really make sure that the focus of this wave is to kill these bugs ASAP. But you should of course also not ignore this trash can for too long, since at the end of his turn he increases his attack by quite a lot. So you want to make sure you weakness break him too. And why do we want to weakness break him? Well, he's quite tanky. And how do we apply weakness types on him? Well, every time you attack him with an ally, he will get the weakness type of that ally. He can get 2 weakness types this way. If you have Anaxa, he can have all the weakness types, of course, but this way he can just get 2. So make sure you apply weakness types on him of allies to the most consistent attacks. So if you have 3 weakness types in your team, don't apply a weakness type on him of the ally who is the slowest and does the least amount of attacks. So if I had like a 3B instead of a Sunday here, then I do not want to, since who does the most attacks then? Ice MC, Lucha, or 3B? Well, Mayday Lucha do the most attacks, they have the same weakness type, and 3B or Ice MC who does more attacks? 3B of course. So I do not want to apply Ice weakness to the trash can then. And then at last we got this enemy. He has a single target attack, but the most interesting attack of his is this AoE attack he will do, where he will do the same amount of damage to all your allies. So the damage will be evenly distributed. The real focus of this wave is just the bugs. Make sure they are dead ASAP. And then the trash can of course, and at last these enemies, since they don't really do things that hinder you too much. But I want you to remember this though. You can play with Hyacinth in this Pure Fiction, since Hyacinth is to be expected to come on the 21st of May. The last day of this Pure Fiction is on Sunday the 8th of June. So that means you got like 2 weeks to play with her in this Pure Fiction. But if you're like, I'm not sure whether I want to pull for Hyacinth or not because I want to know how Cypher works, well, the 3.3 livestream is to be expected around the 9th of May, where Hyacinth and Cypher's kit will be released. But also remember that on the 6th of May, the 3.4 drip marketing is to be expected, where they will potentially drip market the Fate characters, since 3.4 will be in the 3rd quarter of 2025. So with all of this in mind, you can make a more educated decision on who you want to summon for or not. But my point is basically, and I will always say this, you have still lots of time for this Pure Fiction. Just play with whoever you want in this Pure Fiction. All that matters that you have fun. So I thank you for paying attention and see you the next time. Bye.